2,000 years ago, Rome built the greatest arena the world had ever seen, a colossal monument of stone, spectacle, and power. Today, it lies in ruins, but when Grok AI tried to reconstruct it using modern data, something deeply unsettling emerged. Hidden within the structure were traces of knowledge far beyond the ancient Roman civilization, secrets they never intended anyone to see. Grok AI is one of the most advanced artificial intelligence systems available today. It works with vast layers of data, LiDAR scans, drone imagery, archaeological maps, and records from hundreds of Roman structures all at once. With that intelligence applied to the Colosseum, the world could finally see the monument for what it once was, an extraordinary, fully functioning machine designed to operate as a single connected system. But before AI reveals what has been lost, it's important to truly understand what the Colosseum originally was. Most ancient accounts describe the Colosseum as a place of noise and violence where staged animal hunts pushed both humans and beasts to their limits, where famous and deadly battles were dramatically recreated, and where large-scale executions unfolded before tens of thousands of eyes. But what those writers never quite explained, or perhaps never understood, was the deeper puzzle behind it all. How a civilization nearly 2,000 years ago designed a structure capable of holding crowds the size of a modern stadium. The numbers alone still surprise historians. When completed, the Colosseum could hold an estimated 50,000 to 80,000 spectators. No other amphitheater of its age came close to matching that capacity. Crowds could enter, take their seats, buy food, watch shows, and exit again with a speed that many later stadiums struggled to equal. But what makes the Colosseum even more striking is how intentionally it was planned. Every corridor, platform, and holding area served a function, not only for the performers, but also for the thousands of workers behind the scenes who made the shows possible. Yet the Colosseum was not just a place for entertainment. There was something deeply political about its design, a warning meant to unsettle every visitor who stood before it, a reminder that Rome had the resources, manpower, and organizational power to shape the world around it. Its oval shape, its precise geometry, and its enormous footprint were a visible declaration of stability and control. Nothing about it was accidental. The pattern of its arches, repeated in perfect rhythm across the outer walls, was proof of Rome's confidence in its engineering traditions. One of the most innovative aspects of the Colosseum was its approach to crowd movement. The structure contained 80 entrances and exits. Spectators could pour in and out through these passageways so efficiently that modern architects often reference the Colosseum when studying historical crowd management. The system was clear and controlled. A person's ticket led them to a specific staircase, a specific corridor, and finally to a seating tier determined by their social status.
Senators sat closest to the arena, followed by the equestrian class. Ordinary male citizens filled the next levels. Women were placed higher up, and enslaved people stood in the very top galleries. The building itself was a map of Roman hierarchy, and every visitor could read it with one glance. The Romans deployed their most advanced stage technology for the Colosseum. Its arena floor contained dozens of trapdoors, and beneath them, music stretched a hidden world of cages, ramps, pulleys, and lifts. From this underground maze, workers could send animals, props, and performers rising into the arena in smooth, controlled motion. This innovation began under Emperor Vespasian around the year 70. He commissioned it as a gift to the Roman people and as a way to restore public trust after the chaos of Nero's rule. Even the location of this monument carried a message. Nero had once built a private lake here as part of his vast palace complex. By draining it and replacing it with a public amphitheater, music, Vespasian made his point clear. This land was no longer an emperor's playground. It belonged to Rome. When Vespasian died, the work continued under his son Titus. He completed the project and inaugurated it in the year 80 with 100 days of games. The construction effort behind it was massive. Tens of thousands of enslaved workers took part, along with paid artisans, engineers, and craftsmen. They used a range of materials chosen for strength, weight, and speed of construction. Roman concrete, known as opus cementicum, allowed the builders to form vaults, foundations, and walls with remarkable durability. Travertine limestone formed the outer shell and the main seating tiers. Lighter volcanic stone, known as tuff, shaped inner walls where excess weight would have caused strain. Brick-faced concrete built the corridors and support structures. Iron clamps locked large stone blocks together, while marble framed the entrances and lined the seats reserved for Rome's elite. The Romans also made use of arches and vaults to distribute weight across the structure, giving it the strength needed to support tens of thousands of people at once. They used a modular approach, breaking the project into repeatable units so different teams could work on multiple sections at the same time. For a structure of
Apollo 16 launched on April 16, 1972, carrying a crew of 3. John Young was the mission commander, a veteran astronaut who had already flown to the moon once before on Apollo 10. Ken Mattingly was the command module pilot, responsible for keeping the spacecraft in lunar orbit while the others descended to the surface. And Charles Duke was the lunar module pilot, the man who would stand beside Young on the moon. 3 highly trained, carefully selected professionals on what was expected to be one of the most scientifically productive missions in the entire Apollo program. Their destination was a region called the Descartes Highlands. Geologists had chosen this location deliberately. The highlands were believed to contain some of the oldest rock on the entire moon, material formed during the earliest and most violent period of lunar history, billions of years ago, when the solar system was still taking shape. Scientists expected to find answers there, ancient, undisturbed geology that would fill in critical gaps in what we understood about how the moon, and by extension the Earth, came to be. The mission objectives were clear and straightforward. Duke and Young were to deploy scientific instruments across the surface to measure moonquakes, solar wind activity, and cosmic radiation. They were to collect rock and soil samples from highland terrain that no previous mission had ever reached. They were also tasked with pushing the lunar rover across more challenging and uneven ground than any earlier crew had attempted, testing both the vehicle and their own ability to navigate difficult terrain. Young and Duke landed the lunar module named Orion on April 21st. Over the following 3 days, they conducted 3 separate moonwalks, referred to as EVAs, which stands for Extravehicular Activities. The first EVA lasted over 7 hours. The second exceeded 7 hours as well. The third ran just under 6. In total, the 2 men spent more than 20 hours working directly on the lunar surface, traveling over 16 miles across the highlands in the rover, and collecting 211 pounds of geological samples from multiple locations. Everything was being monitored from the ground at all times. Every word spoken between Duke and Young was recorded. Every reading from their suits, their oxygen levels, their heart rates, their exact positions on the surface was being tracked in real time by Mission Control in Houston. If anything had gone wrong, the people in that room would have known about it immediately. And nothing did go wrong. That is the important thing to understand. Apollo 16 was running smoothly. No equipment failures, no medical emergencies, no unexpected deviations from the flight plan. By every measurable standard, this was one of the cleanest missions in the history of the Apollo program. The Descartes Highlands were supposed to give humanity a quiet, undisturbed look at the moon's ancient past, predictable geology, known science, controlled exploration. Roughly 5 hours into their exploration of a flat